And especially for a new grad, I'm looking at who's lying on their resume. Your degree here and even your GPA will not get you a job. The way you learn accounting in school will never be like the way you learn accounting in the real world. You can only send so many messages through GPA, but you can send many messages through the impact you have in the community, the extracurriculars you're working with on the side. You can demonstrate excellence by putting yourself in the shoes of doing competitions and things like that.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Pathforward podcast. Today we're very excited to have Nathan Boey with us. He is a management consultant at Deloitte. Welcome to the show, Nathan.
Thanks for having me, Jackie.
Oh, thanks so much to be here. First of all, I just want to say you were born in Canada and your parents immigrated from Singapore in the 20s. In many ways, they carry strong Chinese Singaporean culture, values, while you grew up in a Canadian context. So how has being exposed to two different cultures shaped your worldview?
Yeah, no, it's super interesting because this is particularly something that's common within immigrant children or children of immigrant parents, either first or second generation like myself, in the sense of we experience two cultures at the same time, and it changes the way that we see and interpret the world. So I think everyone has kind of something called like a framework or a lens in the way that they just see and interpret the things going on around them, because there's always the aspect of the objective reality, which is something that happens around you. But then there's the subjective reality, which is how you interpret what happened, like what was the deeper meaning behind that. And then a lot of that is influenced by the way you were raised, the education you were brought up in, and then the culture that you come from, right? So kind of immigrant children like myself, we have something called like a bicultural framework, which means that we always have two or three lenses to see the world in. And for me, for example, there's one lens which I see and interpret the world is the Chinese Singaporean culture, which is what I was raised on. It's the family values and all those types of things. But at the same time, and the reason why I probably will never be fully Singaporean, no matter what, is because I was born and raised in Canada, right? So my education was in Vancouver and North America in general. And the way that you learn and gain your values is also very much so through the education that you go through, right? So for example, the other side of it is I have a very inherently Canadian perspective and way of seeing things because of that education system. So those two things can kind of clash and find ways that they're very different from each other. So an example would be if someone comes from an Eastern culture background, like especially some sort of Chinese or Japanese or Korean, a lot of part of that culture is if you're young and you're inexperienced, like shut up, don't talk, like just listen to me, just listen, right?
Yeah.
But then if you go through a Canadian or American education system, they always tell you no matter how much or little you know, go and speak up, even if it's asking a question. So there are times where because you have a bicultural way of seeing the world, and there are times that those will clash. And I think as bicultural children, if we recognize that those things clash, it's actually a strength because we can choose the way to interpret the world and the way to react to the world in the way that's best suited for the situation. So if I'm in Western settings, I can recognize what's expected of me and what message do I want to send and then react a certain way. Whereas in an Eastern setting, if I'm in that one, I'll know how to adapt and change my approach to things.
Yeah. Actually, what you have said has affected basically many different areas of your life, I would think. But can you specifically talk about how does this worldview affected your in understanding of career, success, or even purpose?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think being a second generation immigrant child, what's pretty common in that is I think I take my career and life and the way I want to live it a bit more risk averse, honestly. So in the sense of things, I'm always trying to, I think pragmatically and then find the next best logical step, one that's not too risky. I think that's why I find myself in like corporate where I work a pretty standard corporate job where go into the office, do work for clients and all those types of things, it's not inherently risky, at the same time decently high potential. So I think coming from that background, and the way I see life, it's a lot more, I guess, maybe standard risk averse, wanting something that's decently high potential, high growth, but then I'm not out here starting a business at 25 like you see some people doing, for example. So I think like taking a risk averse approach to life, slow growth but consistent growth, like I think that's always kind of been the approach I've taken.
Okay. But in the corporate background, or in the corporate kind of context, how do you feel grow up seeing an Eastern value as well as a Western culture and value affect your way to, how can I say, affect your way to act basically in the corporate setting?
I think there's the aspect of, in the corporate setting, there's a lot of different ways of measuring how someone from a culture would act. One of the more common ones is power distance. So power distance is the perceived difference between you and a superior. And that distance grows depending on your level and their level and things like that. But in Western culture, power distance is a much lower factor, meaning that someone at a junior level versus a manager level, maybe the power distance is like this, which means that I still have some leeway to speak to them or talk to them or things like that. Whereas power distance from, let's say, an East Asian culture, even if one is still a junior and a manager, that power distance could be like this, meaning that there's much less leeway for me to speak my mind and argue with someone who's a higher rank than me, because that power distance creates distance between the people and the type of conversations they can have and things like that. I think coming from the East Asian culture as a child and family background, I noticed that I do have quite a bit of power distance, which means that I will find it a little bit of apprehension to get too close to a manager or a director or a partner or things like that. I tend to keep that distance for a while until I feel them make the first step to get close. Whereas I noticed that some of my just straight up Canadian colleagues at my level are way more open with creating a genuine, almost friendship type of relationship with a senior really quickly. Something that I was never really accustomed to, or that's not my first instinct. I do get close with some of the senior people that I work with, but it's always kind of, I'll wait for them to make the first move before I realize or measure what type of relationship they're trying to create with me. But then on the other side, there's that side of relationship building, very, very influenced by my Eastern culture, for example. But in that same relationship with the same person, when it comes to doing work, that's when I noticed the Canadian side actually come out more, in the sense of I'm not afraid with disagreeing with someone or saying what I think is the right next step. That part I'm very open with, very work related and things like that. Whereas the relationship building thing, that one is a bit more I'm feeling it out, waiting for them to make the first move, that type of thing. Which is interesting when you think about it, because the things to do with work and the job, that one is more Western culture, kind of like my education background. But the things to do with relationship building and seeing how we blend together and things like that, which is maybe more family, social, etc., that's more of an Eastern culture background that I'm coming from there, or I lean towards there, which is kind of interesting because, that's the education versus family, job versus relationship. It has the same parallel, if that makes sense.
Oh, wow. Okay. But in all of these things, do you see it as a strength or weakness?
I see it as a strength.
Okay.
I see it as a strength, particularly when you know how to use it and if you're aware of it. I read about the bicultural framework from a book that was written by an international business professor. And she talks a lot about work culture and things like that. And she deals with a lot of Japanese managers working in America or European managers working in China, and about how the difficulty in blending cultures is between that. And then as I was reading the book, I was like, oh, actually, I found it really easy to understand both sides. And then she brought up in the book, this is different with bicultural children because we have that ability to see both sides of things. And that would really help us when we are working overseas, or if we are and it's very common in Vancouver, working with people who are of different cultural backgrounds, because and after reading that, I started seeing it as a way of thinking about how to use that strength, right? So if I meet a client, and even though we're in Canada, we also still have all our cultural backgrounds, right? So if I meet an Indian client or European client or Chinese client, if it's a non-Canadian culture or non-North American culture that I'm familiar with, I'll kind of use that to understand and suss out what does this person expect me to act? How does this person expect me to act? And then how do I reciprocate that? And the more, and especially in professional services, like in consulting, the more that you react the way that someone expects you to react, probably the better relationship you're going to have, right? Because if you react differently than how they expect you to react, you're kind of creating some sort of cognitive dissonance. They're like, why are you acting that way? And then you have a weird Yes, you start off on a weird foot. But if you can kind of guess the way that they expect you to act, and then you act that way, you're going to start off on a good foot. So that's kind of, I guess, making relationships or working within Canada in a multicultural society. And I think it also helps me be more mobile, because when I was in Singapore and I was speaking with a high-ranking Deloitte partner just as my networking, for those who don't know, I'd be interested in working in Singapore at one point. This high-ranking partner, very common in the Commonwealth, for example, he's from Denmark, but then he worked in Deloitte London, and then he moved to Deloitte Singapore to lead a large practice or whatever. And then I asked him, I was like, what was the biggest change or challenge coming from Western Europe and then landing in Singapore and trying to lead the team? And he's a tall white guy, as white as you get, because he's Danish. Right?
That's true.
Blonde, blue eyes, very pale skin. And then he was saying the biggest struggle he had actually was he doesn't know how to get his team's opinion. Because when he's in Denmark, when he's in London, he can just say he can just ask the team, what do you guys think? I want to hear what you think. And then he can ask that same question in Singapore, but the reactions are totally different. And that's because he's putting out the same message, meaning, what do you guys think, right? But the British and the Danish people are reading a different message than the Singaporean people are reading. The message that the British and Danish people are receiving are, my boss, this is his thought, but he's asking me what my thought is because he hasn't had enough time to think about the whole problem. We're more familiar with the problem, so he's asking us to either make sure he hasn't missed anything, or because we have spent more time with this, as a boss, he spends less time with it. He wants to hear whether we have come up with a different conclusion. In Singapore, the message that they're receiving is, this is the way I think it should go. Unless I'm wildly wrong, don't say anything.
So they might think that he's wildly wrong, maybe.
So if anyone wants to say anything, it's because they think he's wildly wrong. But unless he's wildly wrong, they're like, oh, we'll just go with it.
So until it's really, really bad, otherwise nobody says anything.
So same message being given, different message being received. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
And then that's when what I read in the book versus what I'm talking about in real life kind of connected for me, because it's I could work in Singapore, and if I have a Singaporean manager, I'll know what they expect of me. And then if I see the Danish manager, I'll know what they expect of me, because I can kind of see both sides and I can know what message to receive from them.
Okay. Wow, that definitely is a strength, actually. Now, I just want to go back to one thing. You said you're risk averse, which to me is kind of interesting, because as a consultant, you have to look for your client.
Sure.
Though you're working in a corporate in a corporate setting, but the fact is you still have to go out there and to get the client. If you don't have client, they might say goodbye to you. Right? So in that sense, actually, you do take a lot of risk. So how do you kind of reconcile that?
Sure. I think there's the aspect where when you're a consultant in Deloitte, you need to, quote unquote, pay your bills, as in meet your performance metrics, which is sales and revenue and things like that. So everyone at every level has definitely has a revenue metric. Every person drives revenue by the time that they work on a project. And then everyone also has some form of sales metrics. The junior levels, that's very informal, which means just help, right? Once you get to the senior levels, you need to actually close and be the main driver of sales, right? In a corporate setting, Deloitte, if you're not making sales, you'll still get paid for a while until you get fired, right? There's that. So, and just like any job, you'll get paid until you get fired. And then if you're not making sales in Deloitte or other consulting firms, like, yeah, you'll still get paid. You'll worry about your job, but the paycheck is going to keep coming in. Whereas like the opposite of what I could do is I could incorporate myself and do the same thing, but now I'm just by myself, which means that if I don't make a sale, like we're not having any income that month.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's like completely different paradigm in that sense. So if I was a solo consultant just off on my own, if I wasn't making sales, then yeah, I got to be out in the market trying to talk to people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas in Deloitte, like a different set of levers to be pulled, which means that I can think about who else in the company can I team up with, where else can I find opportunity, but it's still within Deloitte, there's a lot of support network. Whereas when you're by yourself, you don't have that support network to help you drive your business.
Oh, wow. I didn't think of that actually. That is very true. But when I hear, oftentimes, even though in corporate setting, I think of being a consultant, it still is challenging because you have to look for your next client. And oftentimes your client is really, really big, right? But of course, like what you said, you have your support. But let's move on a little. Oh, sorry. Yeah, let's go on.
My last point is like you also have your playbook, I guess. Yeah. So working within a corporate setting, if things are working out with you, Deloitte and the firms will be like, okay, here are the things that you can do to help yourself. Okay. You can talk to these people, you can go out in the market over here, or if this is just not working out, this is something else you can do in the firm. Whereas by yourself, you're not given, if things aren't working out, you're just stuck. You can't Google your way out of it.
Yeah, that's a lot of time you can. Yeah. It is very true. So they will give you a suggestion, basically. If they see you not performing, they will first suggest you to take some other form of action first.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow. That makes it also very helpful too. Now let's talk about your career path or you a little bit more. Looking back on your high school years, you have always said that you notice you're good at working with people. So when did you first realize that you're good at working with people, and how do you realize that?
Working in the group project settings in school. Not so much in just regular class and things like that, because sometimes you're in a group project in class, you don't get to choose who you're with, and then you see your group and you're like, all right, I guess I'm going to be the only one working in this group, and you just know. But I would say in the projects, quote unquote, that are voluntary, and I mean extracurriculars at this point, working in those settings, realize that I'm good with people, because when you're in a group setting where people choose to do it, you also end up finding that you're with a personality that will also want to work. And then you have 2, 3, 4 productive people working together. And then I felt like I was good at facilitating conversation, trying to drive action from the group and things like that. So that was one aspect of it. And then the other aspect of it is I also found it really easy to talk to my teachers to, in a way, like get what I needed out of them, whether it was help on a homework or whether it was support on a project or just their advice in general. Like I felt like I could make a good relationship or a conversation with my teachers most of the time. Okay. And it was like that kind of inkling, I guess, that made me think, okay, I'm probably good with working with people, not so much of like an individual contributor who's off by my own corner.
Wow. So by what age, about what grade you begin to realize that?
Not that young, not that early, like maybe grade 11.
Okay. So 16, 17 years old. Yeah. You also take leadership 12 in high school. How did that experience influence your confidence or leadership mindset? This episode is brought to you by JW Music Studio. We offer piano and guitar lesson in both group and private setting. Group lesson is a great way to ignite a student's musical interest. It offers engaging activities that will reinforce specific skill sets. Ensemble playing will strengthen their rhythmic feeling and listening abilities. Most of all, they will experience the joy of making music with others. Contact us to find out our available schedule.
Yeah, I think it was super formative. At the time, I thought it was very impactful. I still think so. But now I think of it more as, oh, it was a great launching pad for me to do the other things I did in university. Like, I don't know if I would have did all those other things in university without the initial like mindset creating moment within Leadership 12. And I think there was maybe 2 or 3 like main takeaways from that class, whether it was experiential or it was more in concept or in theory. So one of the things my Leadership 12 teacher did, his name was Adam Hayes, Mr. Hayes at Glen Eagle. He made us read a book that was about 2 different mindsets and the outcomes that they created in life. One was a victim mindset, which is always like, why are these things happening to me? And then the other one was the growth mindset, which is how do I move forward and what's the next step here? So that the difference between those 2 mindsets was formative for me too. And going back to what we talked about earlier, which is framework and the lens that you see the world, it taught me a different way to interpret the things that were happening to me. One of them being things are just happening to me, and the other them being how do I roll with the punches and move on from this victim versus growth mindset. So I think that was one formative in its lesson, but it's deeper than a lesson because I can always just say that to someone. But the environment he created in the class in the way of reflections and applying to the actual things we were doing in class, which I'll get to, that turned it into not just a lesson, but a new way to interpret and see the world. So moving on from that, the second or third thing that I think I took away from that class was he forced everyone to do reflections on their life. And if your reflection was shallow, he would keep asking you questions until you got to insight. So there's a lot of times where you do a reflection in class, especially in high school, just because you're asked to. But how often does someone like challenge you on that reflection until you get from shallow observation into like insight in your life? So he will challenge you in class in front of everyone until you get to insight. But the thing is, he did that to everyone, so it didn't feel like you were being picked on.
Oh, wow. That would be kind of uncomfortable.
And that's the other part of the thing. And it's a great segue, uncomfortable, into the next point is that like, he always talked about how leadership can be uncomfortable. He's like, you're taking Leadership 12 because you want to get something out of this. Well, I'm going to put you in uncomfortable situations and you're just going to have to live with it, because if you're in Leadership 12, you want to be a leader. If you want to be a leader, you got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable sometimes. And then he applied that in not just making you stand up and reflect in class and all that type of stuff, but also in the sense of the experiences he provided, whether it was going out there, organizing events, or just being in quote unquote the public eye. So your school and speaking and talking, organizing, facilitating, putting yourself out there. And also he was big on the servant leadership aspect. So community impact. So being out in the community, volunteering, working with nonprofits and things like that.
But you also said that it helps you to prepare for your university years. How does this class help you to prepare for that?
Yeah, for sure. I think the main thing is not a concept, but the behavioral trait of wanting to put yourself out there, being okay with putting yourself out there. Because when you're in Leadership 12, and in general, when you're in high school, you're forced to do things, right? You're forced to take a set of classes, and you join Leadership 12, all of a sudden you're forced to do reflections, you're forced to organize some sort of big event, you're forced to speak in front of the school, like you're just forced to do those things, right? It gets you comfortable with it. Also gets you comfortable with it, not just in the act of doing it, but in the mindset of like, yeah, I'm ready to put myself out there. Like you feel confident to do it. And moving into what university life is like, not just business school, not just all the extracurriculars, and not just doing all these extracurricular club things. But university in general is about making your choices, right? And especially SFU is a very, I would say, maybe lenient or laissez-faire university, in the sense of they force you to do very little things. You have a set of courses you have to take for your major, but the credits in your set courses probably only cover about half or 3/4 max of the credits you need to take in university. Meaning, to fill up all the other credits, that's completely your choice. And if you went through business school without doing any clubs, you will still graduate. So they don't force you to do anything. So it's that aspect of, I do want to make a community impact. I am comfortable with putting myself out there. I do want to gather experience, and experience is more important than the degree. It's another thing that we learned in Leadership 12. All of that was formative in first year, second year university. I was out there like first year university actually. I was out there trying to just meet people, more than meet people, do things, facilitate events, run events, trying to figure out the environment and things like that.
Oh, wow, okay. Now, toward the end of the high school, you choose to pursue business administration with a focus on accounting.
Sure.
Something not many students gravitate toward at that age, which you were like, I would imagine that's like grade 11 or 12, you begin to gravitate toward that. What drew you to this path? What was this a long-standing plan, or it developed along the way?
I would say that it wasn't necessarily a long-standing plan. It was, from a high school context, it was maybe plan B.
Okay.
In the sense of, I've always been good at, let's say, STEM, right? Science, technology, E, and math. Engineering and math, I guess. So like physics, chemistry, biology, math. I was always like good at them in middle school and early high school, let's say. And because I was good at STEM, I actually thought I was just going to go like some form of doctor route or engineer. I would just do that. Engineer, not as much. I was thinking more like maybe like something in the medicines or biology or things like that. But then when I was in grade 11, I cut open a frog in biology 11, and I was like, I'm not touching biology. I'm not going into pre-med. If like I hated cutting open this frog and like touching it, I was like, nah. Yeah. If I hate touching things like that, touching like wet things, then I'm like, I'm not going to do biology. Definitely not going to be a doctor. But at the same time, like, I think I've always been, if nothing at all, like pragmatic. So despite going more like STEM type of route in high school, so, I was doing all the biology, chemistry, physics 11, which are all your choice. In grade 11, all those, your courses are basically your choice. So I took those, but at the same time, I also took accounting and economics and marketing and business. So I always had like my STEM path, which I thought I would follow, and then my business path, which is like, that's just something good to know. I was good at accounting because I was good at numbers. I never actually ended up fully taking marketing. I dropped out of that class. But then, when I touched the frog in biology 11, immediately knew I wasn't going to follow biology. I was like, okay, it's either physics or like business/economics.
Okay.
I was pretty good at physics, but what I noticed was the amount of effort I needed to put in to be good at physics was much higher than the people who were actually good at physics in the class.
Okay.
And the people you knew were going to be engineers. So that's when I realized that because of that difference of level of effort we needed to put in, that wasn't the smart thing for me to do, because I could at best be average in that field with a lot of effort. Compared to, I think I thought I could have done better in business and econ, not with less effort because I didn't want to try hard, but it's like, if you can get the same outcome with less effort, what are all the other things you can do with the rest of your time and energy and things like that, right?
So it's very pragmatic after all.
I think as a grade 11, grade 12 kid, that was a very pragmatic way of seeing life.
Yeah, but I think that's wise though, actually. That's very wise. Now, so once you enter university, you became very involved and held multiple positions within the student association. What motivated you to volunteer for this leadership role?
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing that was formative for me was the Leadership 12. So quick recap on that. It's all the exposure to running events, being part of a team, and then trying to grow your soft skills by being in those extracurricular experiences that you don't get through class. So that's point number one. And then I think point number two is, especially in SFUBD, what you're taught right from the beginning is your degree here and even your GPA will not get you a job. And this is...
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And this is 2014 when I started university. So we are not very far away from the recession. Like 4 years after the recession, we all still remember it, right?
Yeah.
So very much so, everyone's like, the degree, the GPA will not get you a job. What gets you a job is whether you can demonstrate that you have the right behavior, you have the right disposition, you have the right skills, soft skills and principles and things like that. So how do you demonstrate that on a resume? Well, you can't do that through your GPA. You can only send so many messages through your GPA, but you can send many messages through the impact you have in the community, the extracurriculars you're working with on the side. You can demonstrate excellence by putting yourself in the shoes of doing competitions and things like that. So it's like, how are all the different ways you can demonstrate excellence on a resume that is beyond just your education? Because when you apply to your first job, you're not going to have another corporate experience because it's your first job.
Yeah.
So how do you fill up that resume and actually have an application, right? Because even when you're applying for your first job, you're probably competing with people who it's not their first job.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's
true.
the competition aspect and getting the resume right was part of it. And then the third part was like, I know there are things I want to work on in myself. And then I saw those extracurricular activities as opportunities to work on those aspects and grow some skills and strengths and things like that.
Okay. So would you say this opportunity of volunteering or into a leadership role, most of the time is you raise your hand and ask for it, or someone is actually introducing it to you?
A bit of both. So in the sense of the clubs all have formal application processes. The competitions especially have formal application and tryout processes. As a business school, we try to do things like corporate, if anything.
Yeah.
So we have all like job applications, there's job descriptions, there's postings on their Facebook and then their website, and you apply to them, you go through an interview process. So there's like almost a very normal like job application process for those things, which we can touch on later, like how I think that's important. But you go through those postings, you meet all the clubs on clubs day, and then you see, they also talk about like what quote unquote positions that they're hiring for, whether it's coordinators or project managers and things like that. And then you apply, you interview, and then you go for it. But at the same time, and again, similar to corporate, you can also get those positions by just being friends with the right people. Because they'll be looking for a VP of finance for their club to manage a $50,000 or $100,000 budget. And then you speak with them, you're friends with them, and they would more likely want to bring someone onto their team to manage $100,000 that they know and they trust.
Yeah.
Versus someone that they don't know, right? They don't know what type of behaviors they'll have and things like that. And that's the thing, is that it's extracurricular, it's volunteer. But at the same time, when you're like 20 years old, $50,000 is quite a bit of money.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? So you want someone like good to manage it, right?
Yeah. You want to have an honest person to do it, that's for sure. Nowadays, many university students, I think even high school students, actually recognize that involvement beyond academic is important for their future career opportunity. So some participant in volunteer activities mainly just want to build up their resume.
Yeah.
So what would you want to say to students who approach involvement in this way?
I'd want to tell them to like stop the crap.
So you think this is nonsense, basically?
I think it's nonsense, yeah.
Okay.
But that's also coming from like my own personal experience, background, and what I do today. So this is a big one. We'll unpack it for a bit. But, I'm involved in hiring. I'm involved in a lot of application reviews and stuff like that. And my biggest thing is when I'm interviewing someone, I'm trying to find who's lying to me. I'm not just trying to find I'm trying to find someone who's good. But the other side of the coin of trying to find someone who's good is I'm trying to find who's lying to me.
Yeah.
And then you try to find who's the best.
Yeah.
So like, for example, like by the time I'm sitting down with them at an interview, their resume was probably good enough. And especially for a new grad, I'm looking at who's lying on their resume. Right?
Yeah.
So they can say that they were president of whatever, VP of whatever, project manager of whatever. And I'm going to poke at that until I come up with an opinion of whether I think they really did the thing well or whether they didn't, they just put it on the resume and they got that, not that they lied about having the opportunity, but that they lied about the impact that they made in that opportunity.
Oh, okay.
Because, there are people who lie about opportunities. I don't know. I could also find that out. I really hope I don't, but I could find it out. But then there's a lot of people who more than lie about the opportunity itself. They lie about the impact that they had. So they could talk about how they were a project manager, they're VP of corporate development or whatever. And then when they were actually doing it, they weren't showing up to meetings. They weren't doing the work that they were assigned. The other people on their team had to cover for them. They were rude to the people around them. They were, and then when you're a VP of finance or whatever, you also have some junior students who are finance manager or things like that. And then they were horrible to those people below them. Now imagine I chose the person who lied about the impact. And then now they're on my team in Deloitte and they're not showing up to meetings. They're not doing the work they're assigned to do. The team is trying to like all the same behaviors that you would exhibit in an extracurricular thing. Probably you're going to exhibit in your real work life, right? And I'm trying to find that person so that I make sure that they never make it onto the team.
Okay.
Because a lot of them do find their way in. And I think I take it on myself to make sure that they don't come near me.
That's true.
Because there's teaching someone, there's growing someone, but why should I give an opportunity to someone who's out there lying about their impact, right? So like when I speak to students, that's what I talk about. I tell them I'm trying to find who's lying about impact, and I'm pretty good at finding it. I'm pretty good at you poke someone 3 or 4 times on the same thing, and then you'll see whether 3 to 5 hard questions on one experience will tell you whether they were lying about the impact or whether they really did the thing well, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So I tell them I'm trying to look for that. I also tell them that if you don't, you get out what you put in. If you go into your extracurricular and you don't really try for it, you're not going to get much out of it other than the thing. Other than the title and then getting the interview and then being interviewed by Nathan. That's your flow. Right? So that's what I try to tell them. And I ask them, like, what impact are you trying to make? What legacy are you trying to create for yourself?
So essentially it's try your best. If you have those opportunities, you should fight for those opportunities. But you should also make as much impact as you can in those areas, trying to be the best person that you can be.
Try to do the thing well.
Trying to do the thing. So essentially that would be truly helpful for your resume. Otherwise, just nonsense.
When I'm in an interview or when I'm interviewing someone, I want to hear some interesting stories. And if you never put your best foot forward in doing the thing, you're probably not going to tell me an interesting story, right?
Yeah, that's true.
But if you really tried hard, put your effort into doing the thing, I'm going to hear a lot of interesting stories about how you were out there hustling, grinding, and then maybe you fell short. If it fell short, I'm actually really interested in hearing that, what you learned from it. Or you can talk about like the debates or arguments you had with your teammates. But if you're not showing up to meetings, you're not having any debates. So
That's true.
yeah.
Now, you also participate in several marketing and business case competition. For those who is unfamiliar with those competition, can you explain a little bit what is this all about?
So the flow of a case competition is you'll be receiving a business quote-unquote case. So think of that as a 10 to 20-page document that outlines a specific problem that a business is trying to solve for. And you're in a team of anywhere between 3 to 5 people. 5 is odd. It's mostly 3 or 4, or 2 to 4 maybe. And then in that team, you're given a set amount of time to develop a solution and more specifically a presentation that you will present to the board of judges. And that business problem could be anything such as we are slowing growth right now. We're trying to find new ways to grow. Can you help us figure out whether we should expand into China, whether should we expand into the States, and things like that? Or we are not doing well. We have expanded everywhere. Where should we shut down? Other problems could be like we're having a HR problem with a specific employee. How do we go about with this culture issue, this PR issue, and things like that? And another type of problem is like we're doing fine, but like how do we improve our growth trajectory? We're just doing fine. So you're given that type of problem. You analyze the market, you analyze the business itself, you analyze the customers, and then you come up with your solution, your presentation, and your strategy. And the people you present to are typically from industry. So if it's a more, I would say, informal competition, the people on the judging panel are just people like me. We work in consulting firms, we work in businesses, but we're involved in universities and things like that. And then if you're in a more formal competition, which is large, like a large one, a fancy one in the sense, what they do is they find a company in their local business environment. They write a case. They understand the problems that company is having. They write a case about it, and then they give that case out to teams of students, and then the students present to the CEO or the VPs or the director. So sometimes you actually get to present to the person running the company.
Oh, wow. Okay. So how much time would they give it to you? Because like what you say, the business case is like 20-page document, a single line that I would imagine.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
They give you about 3 hours is the shortest I've done.
Oh,
and then
wow.
1 week is the longest I've done.
Okay.
Yeah.
So which one you prefer?
Um,
More time or less time? At JW's Music Studio, we offer more than just music lessons. We also nurture future leaders in music education. Our Piano Teacher Apprenticeship Program is an initiative designed for advanced piano students who are ready to take the next step from student to teacher. This program provides a structured, supportive pathway into music teaching. Participants are mentored through every stage, from interview and training to guided teaching and independent lessons, all while being compensated as they grow. Whether your teen is exploring a career in teaching or simply wants to deepen their connection to music, this program offers real-world skills in a safe, encouraging environment. Contact us today at jnwmusic@yahoo.ca.
3 hours was on the short side.
Yeah.
But if you gave me 5, 6, I would say that I don't prefer that more or less than the 1 week.
Oh, okay.
And it's interesting because you've got to figure out like based on, and when you do both, you learn how to like change your mindset.
Yeah.
When you do 3 hours or 5 hours, your mindset is like, let's read as quickly as we can. Read 10 to 20, and if it's 3 hours, it's going to be like 10 pages. It's not going to be the 20, right?
Okay.
Yeah, read it in like 40 minutes, 30 to 40 minutes. And let's all analyze the problem and let's come to quick but logical conclusions about diagnosing what the problem is and then what logical recommendations could be on top of that, on the back of that. And then you say like, okay, is it logical? Does it make sense? You have to make sure everything's logical and makes sense. And then you just run forward with it. And then you do the presentation, you roll with the punches with the Q&A because they will pressure test your ideas.
Yeah.
And you roll with the punches on the spot. It's not like when you get used to it, it's actually not bad. Like you get into a good rhythm.
Okay.
What I found with the 1 week is even after 1 week, so in the 3 hours on the one hand, you're working right up into the minute. And you slam your notebook down like once the timer hits up, you're like, okay, this is done.
Yeah,
but you're working right up into the minute, right?
Yeah.
And then the funny thing is with 24 hours, you're working right up until the deadline.
Okay.
If the deadline is 8 a.m., you're working right up till like 7:45.
Okay.
So like you're still going to use the whole time.
Yeah.
And then when I did my 1 week competition, it was like a Friday 8 a.m. submission, and we submitted on Friday 5 a.m. So you know what that teaches people is that as a human being, if you're given a set amount of time, you will figure out how to use the whole time. No matter what, you'll always feel like you're in a rush. But when you're in a 3 hour, 5 hour, you're like, what's the most logical conclusion we can come up with right now? And we'll run with that because we only have a set amount of time. We have to build a slide on it now. With 1 week, that was a lot of time to like second, third, triple, quadruple guess ourselves. So with the additional amount of time, you just spend more time like gaslighting yourself whether you're right or not.
Right? Probably not a good idea. But have you ever experienced, like in the Q&A section, someone asks you a question you just don't know how to answer?
Several times, all the time.
Really?
Yeah, that was rough. Because sometimes the question they ask you, and I'll archetype the different types of questions. One is a confirmation or clarification or idea. So when they ask you specific details about your idea, you're probably doing well. Sometimes they'll ask you with like I don't understand your idea. And that's when you were, at best, you were confusing. The best thing you could have been is confusing, right? And then sometimes the question they ask you is like, and it's a question, but they'll tell you, I fundamentally think you're wrong. They're like, they'll ask you things like, why did you consider this and not consider that? Sometimes you can have an argument if you're prepared. Sometimes you're not prepared and you're like, that's actually a really good idea. I never thought of that.
So you just agree with them?
No, if you agree with them, then instantly you lose, right? Because if you agree with someone that says you're wrong, then you have just lost.
That's true.
In essence, you've just lost. But what you do is you have to just even if you agree with them, you just have to argue your point. You have to eat it up and just argue why you're right. And come up with some reason why the other option is wrong. And hopefully you can convince them. And there was one time and then the other archetype of question which I don't understand and it's hard to answer is I was doing a presentation in the Netherlands. And then the person had a really thick like German Bavarian accent. And I didn't know how to answer it because I had no idea what he said. And then I asked him like, oh, sorry, like I don't understand your question. Can you repeat it? Or say it a different way? And he said his question again. And I again had no idea what he said. What I did was I picked up on a few words that I think I understood from his question. I have no idea I still had no idea what his actual question was. But I understood from a few words, I understood what part of the presentation he was looking at. And then I just restated the point of that part of the I had no idea what his actual question was. And I just hope that it answered it, but I have no idea.
So you start to join this business case competition very early on, though it's more informal one in the beginning. Like what you said, right? Like the business case competition could be about anything. And I would imagine any sector as well, right? You know, it can be about any sector. So how confident were you in your business knowledge? And if there were gaps, how do you work to kind of overcome them?
For sure. There were a lot of gaps because I started when I was end of my first year and it was informal because it was internal within SFU and things like that. And then when I say I got more formal and better at them over the years, that's when I was out in nationally within Canada, or I was competing in the Netherlands, or I competed in Mexico. Like I would call those like formal, like big competitions because you're not just competing within SFU, you're representing SFU and competing against other schools, right? So starting out, I think I was missing a lot of that business acumen, as you said. And then this is the reason why I say that is because to be good in a competition is not just knowing business. I would say that there is a skill set that you want to develop and discrete different types of skills that make you successful, right? So I would say business acumen is actually only one of maybe 3 or 4 main skill sets to have in the case competitor package. So that's the business acumen skill set is like, do you generally know about finance, marketing? Do you generally know about the strategy sides of business problems and market expansion, business strategy, corporate strategy? Do you generally know those things? Do you understand all terms in business? So like, I'm not an HR person, but I know HR problems. If someone talks about HR issues, like I'll know what to do about it, right? I'm not a marketing person, but I know enough about marketing that I can have a conversation. And that's what we call business acumen, right? Because that business acumen gives you the flexibility to do any problem, right? So that's one core consulting skill set. I think the other one is or core case competitor skill set. They're very similar, case competition consulting. The other part of the package is pure like hands-on keyboard skills. So like outside of your business acumen, are you good at building PowerPoint slides, right? Are you good at reading and analyzing a problem? And even if you don't know a lot of business acumen, can you read this case and understand what's going on, right? And then the third skill set that you can have is just pure presentation. So like there are people where even if they're weak on business acumen, even if they're bad at building slides, they're just very compelling orators, right? Verbally, they're just very good, even if they have no idea what they're saying.
Okay.
So I think like starting out when I was in first year, expectedly business acumen was horrible. Building PowerPoint slides was maybe okay, but good speaker, right? And then by the time I got to my final year and then doing all the case competitions, I would say like I was probably well-rounded across all of them. But then for me, presentation was always pretty good, got better over time, but always pretty good. And then I worked on business acumen. And then the final thing that was weakest for me was actually like building slides and all that type of stuff. The pure like hands-on keyboard skill set. But when I was doing my first year case competition, I noticed that I was really good at my presentation skills, but I was feeling like I was falling behind against some of my teammates on the business acumen side, like understanding the problem, diagnosing it, understanding all the context. And for me, recognizing that and knowing that I wanted to do more case competitions, I doubled down on reading outside of what's taught in class. Because my thinking was, we have 5,000 SFU students in BD. We essentially all take the same class. So taking a class does not inherently give me a competitive advantage. Whether you do well or worse at a class, you did the material, you went through the material, is not giving you a competitive advantage. So like competitive advantage for me was always like, what did I do outside of the classroom? So like I stacked up my knowledge on books and books and books, reading from, I guess you could call them like consultants, authors, management professors, and things like that, to understand the concepts at a deeper level than what's being taught in class. Because even though in class you're given a textbook that's this thick, it's like 20 chapters of things that are very wide, right? Whereas like when you get a book, you just get 300 pages of one topic, right? So that's how I kind of built up the business acumen and general understanding.
Okay. So what were the most valuable lesson in joining this competition in life and in career?
I think the most valuable lesson, maybe there's two or three. The first one for me is that all the things that make you successful, and it goes back to what I previously said, is it happens outside of the normal course of action. So when you prepare for a case competition, especially like a formal one, because in an informal one, you can just sign up and show up, no practice, just show up, right? In a formal one, you will have a coach, you will train for at least 2 months. And your training schedule typically looks like one practice a week on the weekend, right? Let's say it's 6 hours or so.
Okay.
But let's say you're going up, that's fine. But let's say you're going up against other schools, right? And it's an actual competition. If everyone is doing one case a week expectedly, and I'm doing one case a week expectedly, there's essentially no difference in our training program. How can we make sure that we're going to be successful if we're training exactly the same as another team? So in theory, right? If you train exactly the same as another team, you're just hoping that they're dumber than you, right? Because you haven't differentiated yourself. So my whole thing coming out of that was, what are the ways to differentiate yourself and get better outside of the normal core training program so that it can de-risk just the pure difference in our skill sets? So how can I make sure that I'm putting enough into this systematically to improve the chances of us winning? So then outside of the once a week case practice, like how can we go and find people that we know who are working who can give us a workshop on a particular topic? How can we go and like do our research across different industries and share our knowledge in the team so that we can build up a good knowledge base? Because you never know what case you're going to get. So you need to know everything essentially.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So it was that lesson of like, how do I do things outside of the normal course of action to differentiate myself that is still relevant even in the corporate setting? How do you do more than just your job that you're asked to get better, right? And then I think the second or third thing, and I won't go on too long about it, but it's about the aspect of you're getting a new industry, new business problem every week. So it's that aspect of adaptability and learning how to pick up a concept or pick up a context on the fly when you're not deep in it and just understand insight. So I could be given an apparel case one week and then given a pharmaceutical case the other week. But at the core of it, how do we get to insight of the problem and then a logical solution?
Oh, wow. So which is very similar to what you do nowadays, actually.
It is very similar, yes.
Yeah, it's very similar to like, because that's in essence, that is consultancy, right? Now, reflecting on the time you were in university, what do you see is the true value of a 4-year university education, and how do you draw it out and maximize it?
For sure. I think the value of a 4-year university degree for me is purely just exposure. In the sense of when you're in university, you're suddenly presented with a whole lot of choices, right? What courses to take, what clubs to join, what friends to make, all those types of things. So when you're in university, outside of just the pure required courses you can take, I think the value is in having that decision of what you want to focus on and learn, right? Because let's say you join like physics, right? Well, the value you get of it is, okay, what courses am I going to choose to take, right? So is being specific in what direction you want to go. And then it's, okay, outside of those courses, a lot of the physics student will join the robotics club, or they'll join some sort of engineering club or physics specific one to meet other people that are kind of their age and studying the same thing. So having that choice of what you want to study, and then also having that choice to branch out because you have electives. So your electives, when you're in, let's say you're a physics student, right? Your electives could be dance class, language class, or business class. So what you choose between those three as your elective are actually very formative in developing your skill set that's not your main one, right? So it's all those choices and where you want to take yourself. And then I think like what friends you make, whether you're sticking with your high school friends or whether you're making friends in your major, whether you're making friends in the social clubs that are from different majors, those are all like choices to make in different ways that you shape your life when you're in university. Because if you stick with your high school friends, it's more of the same. You know what you're going to get. If you stick with your friends in your major, you're going to get a whole bunch of people who think exactly the same as you. But if you're the type who put yourself in social clubs which are not major focused, then you'll meet a whole bunch of people who are not from your major, think differently from you, and expose you to kind of like a different side of things. So for example, like I can take people I know as like chemical engineers, right? They are more academic focused. They just hang out with other chemical engineers and they just go into Suncor and start working on oil, and like they only do that, right?
Yeah.
But I also have like people who study chemical engineering, and they're the type who they didn't really want to hang out with more engineers because they got enough of that out of group projects and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
But they put themselves in the social clubs, the ski clubs, or whatever it may be, and then they made friends in business and computer science and stuff like that. And then as a chemical engineer, they go and find themselves working in tech, and they find themselves working in management consulting and stuff like that. So extremely same major, extremely different paths because of how they decided to even adapt their social life, for example.
Oh, wow. So basically explore more as much as you can in all aspects.
Yeah, and I think the worst thing that people can do is just not be intentional.
Yeah.
So they go, not be intentional in the sense of they go and do their major, and they don't really do classes outside of their major, or they just, outside of the things they're told to do.
Yeah.
They continue to hang out with their high school friends and just never really expand. And if that's intentional, then fine, you want to live your life that way.
Yeah.
But the worst thing if it's not intentional and they graduate and then wish they lived their life differently.
Yeah, that's true. Now let's talk about your career a little bit. You began your career as a tax analyst at Deloitte. one of the big four accounting firms. Were you surprised by the opportunity? Why do you think they chose you?
Yeah, so I'm close with the manager who ended up hiring me.
Yeah.
And I did ask her a while, like a long time ago. But I did ask her, like, I guess, what were you looking like in your set of interns that you hired, right? And she was saying it was really about behavioral disposition. Because for me, that was my first job. So what I had on my resume was like, I worked at Chapters, now called Indigo, and I worked at H&R Block as like a receptionist.
Okay.
So like first actual corporate job, right? But then she was looking for people who exhibited the right behaviors in the sense of think you'll be good at working with people, good project managing themselves, diligent worker, and also like not a horribly boring person. Because frankly, like working in an accounting firm, you get a lot of applications from really boring people sometimes. But you actually want to be with someone who like fits your vibe and works well with you and is fun to be around, right? So that's what she was looking for. So there were other people who applied into it and got in, or also applied into it and got in, that had other accounting work experience. So clearly it wasn't just, I want someone who wants accounting work experience, because I got in without it, right? But it was the aspect of my application was well-rounded in the sense of decent GPA, had work experience in general, and then also did a lot of other non-school, non-work stuff that demonstrated the same skills. So like finance manager or director of finance at a student club, project manager for student events, like especially like business school events, did the case competitions and stuff like that. So like I had all the same skills, just not in the work experience, but had the right disposition of it. And then in the interview, it was good rapport with the hiring managers, had good conversation and things like that. Interesting stories to tell. Yeah.
Okay. So were you surprised?
By her answer, or that I got it?
Yeah, that you got in. Well, also by her answer too, I think.
By her answer, no.
Okay.
That I got in, I would say I was surprised, like in the sense of you never know how it's gonna go, right?
Yeah, that's true.
But at the same time, like I knew I had a good feeling coming out of it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when you first start at Deloitte, did you feel your education had prepared you well for your role?
In a sense, yes.
Okay.
I think I say that not in disparagement of the education, but in the sense that when you start a job, you'll never feel like you know it.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Like especially the first job, it'll always be like so confusing, right? All the stuff.
But what do you find confusing though? Is it like the system that they have, or
no matter what, like the way you learn, let's say I'll take accounting, right? The way you learn accounting in school will never be like the way you learn accounting in the real world.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Especially very few universities will actually teach accounting that way. Like the only one that I think will be most applicable from school to work is BCIT. Okay. Like I think BCIT is probably the most like quote unquote prepares you for the job you get. Because BCIT will get you to be on software and do accounting on software and all that type of stuff. Thing is, they can never teach you every software, so they'll teach you some major ones.
Yeah, that's true.
But they're like more practical like that, because it's in essence like a polytechnic, although they are more like a university nowadays. But that's their background, right? More practical education. Whereas SFU and other typical universities take everything more theoretical, because you don't have like just lecturers who are also moonlighting as a professor, or moonlighting as a lecturer, but then work as an accountant. Yeah. Like we have like PhD in accounting people. Like they're very like theoretical, right? So we'll learn all the accounting stuff on paper, on hand. We'll do like T-charts, which is like an accounting thing, on hand. We'll have to carry our tax book around with us all the time. And then when you get to the workforce, it's like, no, you don't carry your tax book everywhere. Just Google it. This is the software you're going to use. And then you don't have any like same problems to work with. Like it comes from a textbook. You just have emails. Right? So like all this stuff, like that stuff that will never show up in a university that you have to kind of get used to.
Okay.
But what did the education provide you with? Like I think it provided you with a backbone. So all the accounting studies I did provided me with the backbone to understand the accounting problems I dealt with in the workplace. But it still had to be really explained to me, because problems in the workplace don't show up like they do in university and vice versa, right?
Yeah.
So it provides you with the general understanding, I think. And if anything, I think it's meant to provide you with the skills and abilities to interpret what's going on at work, but you still need to be taught how to deal with them specifically.
Oh, okay. So how did you overcome this confusion in the beginning? Or these challenges?
Yeah, I think it's one that's going to come up. Everyone goes through it.
Yeah.
I think the main thing that you got to do is you got to be comfortable with asking questions, because especially if you start out and you don't ask questions early in your career, you're going to be wondering those same questions later on in your career because you never asked them. Right?
No, okay.
Or you're going to get in trouble for them because you didn't ask them.
Yeah, that's true.
Two outcomes from not asking questions.
Yeah.
Both bad.
Yeah.
Never a good one. So like ask a lot of questions when you're starting out. But specifically like get good at asking questions. So sometimes like people want to ask a question, but their question is along the lines of, I don't get it. Which is tough for someone to respond to you when you just tell them that you don't get it. So even if you don't get it, what you can do is try to structure the problem into 3 components. Like, I don't get it because of this part is confusing to me. I tried to do this, but it didn't really work out. I'm thinking about it this way, but I don't think it makes sense. So even if you just completely don't get it, there's a way to structure the problem into something that someone can react to, which is 3 discrete components or things like that. Okay. So like asking a lot of questions in that sense. And then also, I think knowing how to build a good relationship with your seniors and use that in a way to like get mentorship from them and things like that. Because there's a lot of the soft skills or between the lines type of scenarios in corporate, in any workplace, but especially in corporate, I think, that it doesn't come from a handbook. It doesn't come from teaching you how to do the job. It comes from going out for coffees, getting lunch, one-on-one chats that allows someone to just tell you about all the inner workings of how things get done and the politics and how to react to situations and people and behaviors.
Oh, yeah, that's very true. Now you transition to consulting now. What motivates you to make this transition?
For sure, yeah. So I started out in accounting, which the lifestyle of accounting is at the end of every year, or every fiscal year, companies will engage you to audit them or do their taxes, right? Especially in like public practice accounting, that's what it's like. And then I was on the tax side. So at the end of their year, when they sold other things, did all their stuff, they would go and engage accountants. Us as accountants be like, okay, do my taxes, right? But what I was interested in was not just looking at all these financial statements and all that stuff, but I actually wanted to know like how they did the thing, like how they grew their business, how they cut costs, or why they weren't growing their business and why they weren't cutting costs, and diagnosing their business problems as opposed to being like a service provider for tax return.
Okay.
So that was always in my mind, is like, how can we find a place where I can be solving these business problems and not just churning out tax returns, right? And then it was then where I returned into case competitions, I could say it that way, because I started out case competitions the first year, did the thing, started my job, and then after finishing Deloitte for a bit, I went back to school and started doing case competitions again. And I was like, oh, like, yeah, like I could do this. So I did the case competition, encountered the business problem, came up with some sort of solutions to fix the problem, presented it back, and then did well in the competition. I won a few of them. And then that's when it hit me like, oh, like I'm actually like good at this. I can be more than just an accountant, and this is kind of fun. And that was kind of the start for me to make my way into finding myself in consulting, which is where you could say we're putting ourselves in the shoes of our clients and solving their business problems with them side by side in real time, not just at the end of the fiscal year we do their accounting stuff, right?
Okay. So from your experience in the corporate world, what are the key qualities or habits, interestingly, needed to succeed as a consultant and thrive in the corporate world?
For sure. I think it comes across for me like in 3 main pillars, for lack of better words. I think The first one is your disposition to uncertainty. So in the sense of, we talked about how in consulting, you never know what client or project you're going to have next, right? So for example, my current project ends at the end of February. And every now and then I have to fly out to go there, right? In March, I have no idea what my life is going to be like. And I have to be comfortable with that.
Yeah.
I have to be comfortable that in March, I could be in Regina and I have no idea.
Okay.
Or I could be working Eastern time and I have no idea. Or I could be local in Vancouver and I have no idea. I have no idea whether it's going to be an oil and gas client or an apparel client, or if it's going to be like a government client. Like you just have no idea, even 2 months from today. And I think as a consultant, you have to be uncomfortable with that uncertainty, because there's the uncertainty, as I'm saying, in lifestyle, which is I don't know what I'm going to be doing. But there's the uncertainty of I'm going to be given a business problem to solve for that I may not have really done before. But I have to be confident that I will know and have the skills and the people around me and the team around me to solve that problem. So uncomfortable with uncertainty is being confident that you can figure it out. And then also knowing what are the things you can do, the actions you can take to solve a problem that you're not familiar with. And that's both on lifestyle and in the actual like project you're given, the problem you have to solve for, right? And then that's habit or behavior number one, right? And then habit or behavior number two is, I think, always being active learning. And I was thinking about the word there, because there's passive learning, which is I'm just going to do my job day to day and learn passively by what comes to me. But then there is active learning, which is I am searching for knowledge and information all the time. So that means you're constantly reading industry reports. You're constantly reading new management books and philosophies. You're constantly reading current events about what's going on in the world. And that's especially important because when you work with your clients, you never know what problems they're going to bring you.
Yeah.
So you can go have a conversation with a director or a C-suite. And even if they're in oil and gas industry, you don't know what specific problem they're gonna ask you about, right? Because oil and gas industry, they can be asking you about specific things about upstream, midstream, downstream, and all that type of stuff. What are other companies doing? Or they could be asking you about like stuff that's completely agnostic from the industry. And it's like, how do I move to the cloud? What do I do with AI? How do I transition from one system to another? It could be tech, or it could be like HR stuff. And all. So you never know like what type of problem you're going to want to have a conversation about. And you got to be knowledgeable enough to have a conversation about anything. Not that you know everything, but that you can understand and interpret the problem. Because if you have never heard that problem before, you'll never know what to make of it, right?
Yeah.
So that's the second behavior, is like kind of always being active learning and listening, because we have to be a little bit versed in everything.
Yeah.
Right? And then I think the third behavior or disposition that's really important within consulting or corporate is kind of that politics side, I would say. So knowing how to exist within the corporate environment to get what you want, for lack of better words.
Yeah.
But I think it's that aspect of, in consulting, you never have a direct manager. You only have like project managers that you work with. And then after a project is done, you don't have the same manager anymore. Like you're kind of floating around.
Okay.
So you've got to figure out like, who are the people that I like to work with and I should be working with in this environment? How do I like get close to them? How do I like market myself to them? Who are the team that I want to work with? And as a manager, for example, I get to also choose my team.
Yeah.
So who are the teams that I want to work with, and how do I get them onto my projects and things like that? So knowing how to kind of exist in a more fluid environment, where power and authority is not direct, but it's very indirect and influential, as opposed to hierarchical.
Yeah. So would you say in general, not just for consultancy, if you want to be thrive in a corporate world, those skill set or those habits is
I think
very important?
all the same. They come out in different contexts.
Yeah.
In the consulting context, it's one way, but in a typical corporate environment, all the same things, just maybe in different flavors.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Thanks so much for sharing your wisdom, Nathan.
No worries. Thanks for having me, Jackie.
Wow. It's great to hear your experience and like a lot of wisdom and insight that you have actually at such a young age to me.
Getting less young over time.
But to
Almost,
me,
yeah.
like when I hear your story, I think at this point you can already exhibit this much knowledge and I mean insight is really incredible. So, but
Thank you.
anyway, thanks so much for spending your time to be here. Thank you. Just
Yeah,
want
good
to
to be
shake your
here.
hand again. Thank you.